Movie tie-in games have always been a strange concept to me.
You still do your own stunts?
No begging, no bribes. She knew better. Honor among killers. We who are about to die.
Oh.
Like, who watches Night at the Museum and thinks to themselves, damn, I really need a game about this? But during the 2000s, it seemed like every movie was required to have its own tie-in game. You like Harry Potter? Here's a bunch of games to play. Why does Hagrid look like that?
Hagrid, you're pushing me over the f***ing line!
Oh, you're an Iron Man 2 enjoyer? You'll enjoy this then. Do you want to see Chris Hemsworth in stunning Xbox 360 graphics? Batman Begins. More like Batman. This game is shit. Remember R.I.P.D? Of course you don't, but it had the funny Deadpool man, so obviously they made a game about it. Wow, this looks great.
Get those pants off.
There's even tie-ins for much more obscure titles like G-Force, the movie about super spy guinea pigs,
Bravo 6. Going dog.
and even one for fucking Charlotte's Web. Truly, this is peak gaming. Now as of today, you still get some tie-in games with the likes of World War Z, but for the most part, the movie tie-in game seems to have died out due to the vast majority of them being shit. But if you somehow manage to dig past all this trash, well then you can find some diamonds in the rough. See, there's a handful of these games that are actually good, and in some cases, better than the film they're based on. But for me, when I think of the best tie-in game, I of course think of Spider-Man 2. The PS2 version, not the awful PC port. Seriously though, I spent my entire childhood playing this game. Spider-Man 2 somehow managed to replicate the feeling of watching Spider-Man on screen, from the incredible physics-based web swinging and the pretty violent combat, to the outstanding acting performances.
This is bad.
Yo, who invited this chick?
Okay, admittedly, the voice acting wasn't great despite the fact they had the original cast involved, and the graphics have aged a little, but I can ignore all that for the simple reason that we have pizzas to deliver. Regardless of its faults, Spider-Man 2 became the undisputed gold standard for every Spider-Man game that followed, with many games taking elements from it for the next 19 years. Oh god, is this game 19 years old? Oh, I'm fucking old, man. Now, when it comes to the Raimi trilogy, each movie had its own tie-in, with Spider-Man 1 being pretty mediocre. Like, they hadn't really figured out the web swinging yet, considering Peter is apparently swinging off the ghost of Uncle Ben, and the voice acting again isn't great.
Who are you? No, wait. Let me guess. The Emerald Elf?
You're looking at him, baby.
Although, the game did have some cool aspects, like letting you fly around as a fully playable Green Goblin, or you can just shove a VR headset on and play in first person. This really does make you feel like Spider-Man. Spider-Man 2 would then come along, fix a lot of these issues, and as I've mentioned, is the absolute GOAT. And then there's Spider-Man 3.
Giant lizards!
Now I am an avid defender of the movie, we do not tolerate any Spider-Man 3 slander on the Alex Webb channel, but I can see why it's not everyone's cup of tea. Like, Sam Raimi himself didn't even want to include Venom in the first place, Sony pretty much forced him to do it, hence why he's only in the movie for like 10 minutes before getting nuked. But I will forever defend this movie for having beautiful scenes like the birth of Sandman, and for of course, giving us Bully Maguire. Although, when it comes to the tie-in game, I can't defend this. Lock him up, Your Honour. But first, this video is in paid partnership with BetterHelp. Now, full transparency, my work-life balance is pretty bad. I mean, I spend weeks on end locked away editing, which can leave me and my poor brain feeling a little burnt out. But with BetterHelp, I've been able to talk about forming better working habits and managing all the stress that comes with making YouTube videos. Seriously though, looking after your mental health is super important, and regardless of what you're going through, therapy can offer you the tools to help improve yourself, and with BetterHelp, it's more accessible than ever. See, things like finding a good therapist can be pretty difficult, but BetterHelp makes pairing you with an ideal match simple and easy. Like, all you need to do is just fill out a few questions, and then boom, BetterHelp finds the best therapist for you in only a few days. And if for whatever reason that particular therapist doesn't fit, you can just switch them for a different one at no additional cost. On a real, I've used BetterHelp recently, and I can definitely say talking to someone has drastically helped improve my headspace. So if you feel like you're struggling, just use the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/alexwebb to get 10% off your first month of BetterHelp. And hopefully, with some therapy, your brain can go from feeling like this to this. Released in May 2007 on the same day as the film, and developed by Treyarch before they would exclusively make the funny shooting games, Spider-Man 3 was one of the earlier titles in the new console generation, joining the ranks of other games like Call of Duty 3, Marvel Ultimate Alliance, and The Elder Scrolls Oblivion.
Show me what you've got.
So obviously this game had a lot to live up to. Like, everyone's expectations were pretty high, especially with Treyarch coming off the back of making the adored Spider-Man 2, as well as the Ultimate Spider-Man game, which is quite frankly a forgotten masterpiece. The trailer did a very good job at hyping everyone up too, showing off Spidey dramatically swinging through New York City, beating up a plethora of villains, all with an intense orchestral score playing over the top. So with Spider-Man 3 having all that going for it, you'd expect the final product to be Game of the Year worthy. Then you actually press play and realise you were wrong. From the moment you start this game, you're hurled into a fiery explosion with no context as to what's going on. Who is this man? I have no fucking idea, but while you're trying to figure that out, Bruce Campbell bullies you for being bad at the game.
Press the attack button to, wait for it, attack. That's right, we have a whole team of people dedicated to naming these buttons, and that's what they came up with.
You make your way through the flaming building, beating up these lovely looking gentlemen, until you find a helpless woman strapped to a bomb. And I'm going to stop right here. What do you think is going to happen next? A, you call the fire brigade to help you out the building. B, you save this woman by disarming the bomb.
Bomb has been defused.
Or C, I fuck up the QuickTime event and Peter eats shit. If you pick C, congratulations, you win a brand new car. Now feels like a good time to mention that this game is infamous for its QuickTime events, and I deliberately failed every single one of them due to the fact they are so unintentionally funny and shove an endless amount of dopamine into my head. When you actually press the right button prompt, Peter saves this lovely looking woman and swings out the window as the building blows up, undoubtedly killing anyone else still inside. Great job, Spidey. The game then cuts to present day and quickly establishes all the main antagonists like Sandman, Harry as the New Goblin, and of course the symbiote.
Oh my god, this is so cool.
As well as letting you know that various gangs are now running around New York.
You are somebody's bitch!
In all honesty though, I didn't really pay much attention to any of this, because I only had one thought going through my head.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
See, I can recognise that Spider-Man 2 doesn't exactly look fantastic, but that game came out in 2004 on the PS2, whereas Spider-Man 3 came out 3 years later on big shiny next-gen consoles, yet somehow looks like this. Swinging through this open world is honestly a joyless experience, because the city is filled with buildings that look like they're made out of cardboard boxes, as well as having citizens that look, dead inside. The game is also clearly having a hard time trying to keep up with everything that's going on. Like, the second you have more than 2 people on screen at the same time, the frame rate plummets to like 2 FPS, and I genuinely think my PlayStation is about to short circuit. I mean, admittedly, my PS3 is well past retirement age, but through my extensive research, I figured out that you could be playing this game on a PC built to fight the entire population of Sweden, and it would still run like shit. But at the very least, you can just sit back and enjoy the cutscenes. Oh Jesus fucking Christ. Seriously, who approved this? Who legitimately looked at these game models and thought to themselves, yep, you've really captured Toby's likeness here. Bear in mind this game came out in 2007, the same year as Uncharted, Bioshock, Modern Warfare, Mass Effect, and of course, the Ratatouille video game. And compared to any of those titles, Spider-Man 3 looks like a PS2 game pretending to be a PS3 game. In fairness though, you probably won't have much time to think about how bad the game looks, because you'll be too busy fighting every single Spider-Man villain known to mankind. See, the movie already had a lot on its plate, juggling the 3 main villains of Sandman, Harry and Venom to varying degrees of success. But evidently Treyarch watched Spider-Man 3 and decided that the movie would be infinitely better if it included the Lizard, and Scorpion, and Rhino, and the Kingpin, and a bunch of weird made up ones too. I'm sure that'll get the review scores up. Firstly, let me introduce you to the made up gangs you'll have to deal with, starting with the Apocalypse Gang, who are a bunch of muscly men that are big fans of Mad Max based on their impeccable dress sense. Then there's the Arsenic Candy Gang, who put on evil fashion shows, run sweatshops that produce teddy bears, and host some fantastic weddings.
Now's the part where I object, right?
No!
And lastly, we have the Dragon Tail Gang, a Yakuza-style group that want to steal ancient Japanese artifacts from your local history museum, and worst of all, they made this poor man run around like this. Pure evil. However, getting these gangs off the street is only the first thing to do on your to-do list, because then you've got all the actual villains to fight. Meaning, for the vast majority of this game, you go from doing things like diving into the sewer to try and find Kurt Connors, who's turned himself into the Lizard, while struggling to stop Kraven and his side piece Calypso from hunting him down.
I've just found this Calypso. It is fucking minging.
To then fighting Rhino and using Scorpion as a human gun in order to expose an evil lab known as Mecha Biocon. How did that name make the final cut? Oh, not to mention, Wilson Fisk also shows up for like 5 minutes until you throw him out a window. And before I forget, you even recreate the death of Jean DeWolf, a storyline from the comics which is incredibly dark. So I wonder how this game handles it.
DeWolf, no!
If you couldn't already tell, there's an insane amount of enemies crammed into this 8-hour game, to the point where much more important characters are kinda swept under the rug to make room for Treyarch's very own creations, like, the Mad Bomber. I wonder what you'd like to do. Seriously, this man is by far the worst inclusion to this game, based on the fact that the only reason he wants to blow up New York is because he lost all his money after the Daily Bugle published a bad story about him. So like any sane man, he bombs the place. He also likes to plant these bombs throughout the city, so obviously that means you're going to have to disarm them. Unfortunately, to do that, you have to play a hacking minigame that even a trained FBI informant would struggle with. On a more positive note, he does have some good dialogue. But even after you've taken care of all of that, there's still a worse villain I haven't talked about yet. The fucking camera. I don't know what it is with these older Spider-Man games, but they were never really able to figure out the advanced nuances of a camera, and considering I'm swinging into a building half the time while playing this game, I'm going to assume they still haven't. Like, just trying to crawl on walls or get through a door raises my blood pressure of how janky everything is. Like, the game gets such basic shit wrong, it's genuinely quite impressive. Undoubtedly though, the combat suffers the most from these issues. Oh, what's that? You want to focus on an enemy that's slightly to your right? Well, unfortunately, the cameraman got distracted by something else, and now you've died because you couldn't tell what the fuck was going on. On top of all this, Treyarch were apparently big fans of Max Payne, because the dodge mechanic here is basically you entering bullet time and making everything go in slow motion. At least until the bar runs out. And then, there's the boss fights, which are by far the worst offenders here, raising my stress level so high that it sent my hairline into cardiac arrest. This is pretty much due to each boss essentially being a walking punching bag with an ungodly amount of health, whereas you don't have nearly as much, and there's no way to even regain it. Like, there isn't so much as a health pack in sight, and given all the issues I've just stated, you're probably going to need one. Now at this point I know what you're thinking. Sure, there's way too many villains, the gameplay is pretty mediocre, and the game looks questionable. But surely the story is the one saving grace this game has. I mean, after all, it is based off this cinematic masterpiece. Well, I'm here to report that the story isn't good either.
Giant lizards!
See, there isn't really a story to this game. Rather, they've just taken some of the most memorable scenes from the movie and recreated them in the game with none of the context needed to actually understand what's going on. Like, when Peter gets a black suit in the movie, it's at the point where he finds out Sandman killed Uncle Ben, and he's so wrapped up in wanting to get revenge that it leads to Peter trying to kill him with some good old H2O. However, in the game, we haven't actually met Sandman yet because of all the other shit you've had to deal with, and thus we have no idea why Peter is trying to kill this man. But hey, at least we've got the Mad Bomber, right? Speaking of which, the black suit doesn't really change up the game that much, aside from giving you a rage mode, which, to be fair, does help a lot during combat. There you go, game, a compliment. Aside from that, the only other thing that really changes is that Peter is a bit of a dick during cutscenes now.
Get your feet off my desk!
What's the magic word?
Get the fuck out of my sight before I demolish you.
I feel like it's also a very good time to mention that despite having 2 games under their belt, the voice acting is still...
Peter, what's gotten into you lately?
Nothing that's stopping your gums from flapping wouldn't solve.
shit. See, I'm under no impression that Tobey Maguire, Kirsten Dunst, or even James Franco are bad actors, but holy shit, these games would make you think otherwise. Like, considering they have the majority of the cast reprising their roles here, how does nobody give a good performance that isn't called J.K. Simmons?
Giant lizard!
Getting back to the main story, after spending the last couple of missions being a complete menace, Peter figures out that the black suit may have a slight negative effect on him. Unfortunately, he only realizes this when Mary Jane finally has enough of his shit and breaks up with him.
Are you breaking up with me?
Sorry, Peter. I just can't be with you right now.
Absolutely heartbroken, this leads to Peter getting rid of the black suit in more or less the same way it happens in the movie, along with Eddie Brock getting the symbiote and becoming Venom. Now when it comes to Big Eddie Brock, we've only really seen him in the game for like 5 minutes, but during that time you do catch him trying to incriminate you using a fake Spider-Man, who he probably pulled straight out of Comic-Con. So in order to stop this slander from hitting the headlines, Peter does the sensible thing and smacks the shit out of him. I mean, at this point, I'd argue Eddie's vendetta against Spider-Man is pretty justified. Anyway, after Eddie transforms into Venom, he forces Sandman to help him with his plan to kill Spider-Man by kidnapping his daughter.
Eddie!
This takes us into the final mission of the game, having you take on both Sandman and Venom by yourself. Well, after you finish taking photos for the Daily Bugle, of course. Not unlike the movie, Peter comes across a news report showing that Mary Jane is in danger.
I just can't do it. I can't take
this shit no more, man.
Obviously, he suits up and swings over to save her, being confronted by Venom in the process, who clearly isn't over that punch from earlier. Luckily for you though, Peter has a good old gamer guide and remembers the symbiote is weak to high-pitched sounds, so of course you whip out your speakers and play some of the worst sounds imaginable. Unfortunately for you, this is a tag team match, and Sandman tags himself in before you manage to save MJ.
How do I fight that?
Today in this video, I'm gonna go ahead and show you how to make glass in Minecraft.
But no need to worry, because the man, the myth, the legend, Harry Osborn makes his glorious return.
Tonight, the topic is masturbation.
This starts a fight with Sandman, where you surprisingly don't play as Peter, but rather Harry, using his lovely assortment of weapons.
He isn't solid enough to hurt. Maybe if I could get him wet.
Once Harry's taken down Sandman, he then tries to help you with Venom, which doesn't really go too well for him. Eventually though, after a very drawn out and painful fight, you finally manage to defeat Venom by impaling him. After that, the game quickly wraps up as Peter and Mary Jane reunite, Sandman gets his daughter back, and Harry is apparently missing, I guess. Then as the game finally came to an end and I watched the credits roll, I ejected the disc from my PlayStation, stuck a note to it, and mailed it to Siberia, where hopefully it will never hurt anyone ever again. See, Spider-Man 3 is a very polarizing film. Some people hate it with a passion, while others will defend it till their dying breath. But when it comes to this game, nobody fucking likes it. Genuinely, it is baffling to me how much it gets wrong. The story is an unfocused mess because of the sheer amount of shit going on, the gameplay is so janky that it stole my hairline, and these models are definitely gonna haunt my dreams. And yeah, I'm sure there's some older Spider-Man games that are much worse than this, but for me, this game is a much bigger disaster because they literally had the blueprint for a good Spider-Man game right in front of them. Yet we somehow ended up with this.
You're a freak!
Although, with all that being said, the Scorpion arcade game is pretty fun, so I think I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10 with a badass seal of approval.